All right, now we are recording. We're not what?
ABR.
What's that?
Always be recording.
Oh no, we're not. We're not ABR yet. We're not that high end.
So we're on.
We are recording. This is now
All right.
the third, believe it or not, third Excuse to Hang Out
Man,
podcast.
man, that's amazing. How many views on our last one?
We're up to, last time I looked, I think just 18.
Mm.
So
Well,
struggling a little, to maintain the numbers. After the honeymoon phase of the first one where we got a whole like 30 views, 40, something like that.
I did.
The second one's dragging behind a little.
I did mention it at work. So
Did you really? That's kind of scary.
yeah, shared some links. So, well, this one should hit at least 19 before the week's out.
Well, we can only dream.
We were real quick. We were talking about animals before we started recording. We did have a death last night. One of our chickens died.
Oh, that's a shame.
I do everything I can to protect them from the wild animals. Build them a fortress, bury the chicken wire 6 inches under the ground. 4x4 post cement in the ground. Thick, heavy gauge steel wire. Nothing can get in. Things have tried to dig underneath the fence and it failed. We put rocks all around the edge. It's completely secure. So I go up there to give them some water last night. And I'll take the lid off the bucket and just leave it open because, it kind of gets hot in the bucket and it gets gross in there. Leave the bucket off this time, the lid. So chicken got in there and drowned itself.
So you can protect them from everything but themselves.
Yes. They are just constantly trying to kill themselves. So there was 8 last night. There were 7 this morning. I couldn't find it anywhere. Called Timmy from work. I said, "Can you go see if you can find another chicken?" He's like, "I found it. It's in the bucket."
That sucks.
Isn't that sad?
That is sad.
I mean, it just probably perching on the edge, fell in, and I guess chickens can't swim. Did you know chickens can't swim?
I didn't, but how deep is that bucket?
It's a 5-gallon bucket. And they're 9, 10 weeks old. They're almost full grown. I just don't know how Anyway, it was
all right. Well, that's a shame. I know you talked about housekeeping stuff the last time.
Yeah.
Well, I have something in our last one about cars, where we talked about cars about 4% of the time.
Yeah.
And
I think it was 6.
It might have been 6.
I think space, Russia, and vodka kind of absorbed most of the conversation.
So I mentioned that there, as far as vehicles that I would consider buying right now, there wasn't anything out there that was manual.
Yeah.
I found one.
And did you buy it?
Well, not yet, but
No.
I don't know if I'll get one or not. But it's pretty cool. Have you seen the new Ford Bronco?
Oh yeah, I just watched a video on YouTube of it. I watched the Ford video on their website, and
yeah,
it looks amazing. Looks like it'll compete with the Wrangler.
Yeah, I have a Wrangler now, and there's some stuff about it that's different than the Wrangler, and it's it's a newer vehicle. I'm sure it's got a lot more gadgets and gizmos than my Jeep, and in terms of I don't need any of that stuff, but
Everybody needs that stuff.
It's still pretty sweet.
It looks
and it's
really
available.
Nice.
It's available in a 7-speed manual. Did you see that?
I did see that. I did. I was impressed. That was amazing. The
Yeah.
whole thing, just some really neat options.
Yeah, it really is.
I mean, I know that some of the things that the Wrangler has, the diff locks and automatic. Was it the links come up, separate automatically? The Wranglers do that.
The front sway bar.
Yeah, the front sway bar.
It can disconnect so that you can more flex.
Yours does that. Yours does that automatically?
Yeah, the Rubicon does. Well, there's a button. You press it and it'll disconnect them.
Yeah. I saw you when we were, was it Black Bear or which path was that where you kind of got hung up for a fraction of a second? No, you just locked your rear diffs in for the first time, I think.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah, because you're like, oh, I might not make it. And then, a second later, you just crawled right out.
I'm sure I would have made it, but it was just,
It was fun.
It was, yeah, you have to feel like you need to push those buttons every once in a while.
Yeah. I went around it in the Trailhawk and was like, aw,
You'd have probably made it, but you'd have probably had
Oh,
more than a couple light scratches underneath when you got back.
yeah, I did have some scratches anyway, but surprisingly, all the stuff we went through and what I went over top of, I thought it'd be way worse.
Yeah.
I mean, it was amazing how well that you think you're gonna get hung up or you think you're gonna scrape, and you're like, no, you're good.
Yeah.
You just had to kill yourself walking in front of me and spotting me with every.
Yeah. That wasn't too bad.
Yeah, you say that now. You were tired at the end of the day.
A little bit, but it was fun.
It was. So you got yours on order, or
No, but I was
yet?
on their website and they have a spot where you can, for like $100, you can put yourself in line to order one.
Oh my gosh.
And then like once they start taking orders, they'll get in touch with you to transfer that reservation into an actual order for a real for a Bronco. And it's like
Wouldn't,
it
wouldn't
was
that be fun?
and you can, I mean, once when they contact you, you could always just say never mind and get your $100 back. So it was really tempting to do it, but I still didn't.
Still didn't. That'd be amazing. As long as they're better than the previous generation of Broncos.
It wouldn't take
I'm-
much.
My mom had one, and it was bad. And of course, they always bought used vehicles that were 120,000 when they bought them, miles, not dollars, and they were always junk.
Yeah.
Back then, it was like that's all cars lasted. You get 100,000 out of it. That was great.
Yeah, that
In
was
the
actually
80s and 90s, and that Bronco was broke down constantly, and I wasn't old enough to work on it.
yeah.
I mean, I tried. I was 7. I wanted to, but it was just in the shop all the time. Every time we needed the four-wheel drive, it didn't work. So anyway, they're better than that.
Yeah, it's funny because that actually kind of brings me a little bit to something I was going to talk about in today's topic, because one of the kind of themes today is just the fact that everything is getting less expensive and cheaper, but also cheaper built,
Yeah.
But one of the things I was going to mention was that kind of the exception is cars. Now, granted, new manufacturing techniques, new, metallurgy technologies, new advanced materials, and, they can be so much more precise with stuff, and they can do so much better job engineering stuff to last
Yeah.
that they can build it cheaper, but it can still last longer. And it's like, and that's what I was going to say. I was going to talk about, think about a car back then, like when they, like your mom's Bronco. And
Yeah.
I mean, you buy
Most
a car.
vehicles back then.
Yeah, back then, you buy a car and it's like, sure, you might be able to get 100,000 miles out of it, but you've had to do 3 tune-ups in that much time just to keep it running smooth. It's probably had all kinds of brake problems and drivetrain like weird issues, U-joints and bearings and seals. It's probably had leaks, and I mean, think about it.
Cam lobes worn off.
Yeah, it's just just
The
weird
GM
problems.
soft
Did it really have
cam.
that?
Brad's Impala. That was a thing on. That was the 5 liters. They had
Oh, okay. It
soft
wasn't the
joints.
Bronco. I thought you were
No.
saying that. That's why I was like, really? That thing
No,
had that?
but remember the soft cams.
Yeah.
And anyway, yeah, that was. I remember I bought a car when I worked for the county, and it was, it had 100,000 miles on it. This was closer to the 2000, and the guy's like, "Man, you used to buy a car that many miles that when I was young, and it was in the junkyard. There's no way." And that was 20 years ago, 25 years ago,
Yeah.
and it seems like they've only been getting better.
Well, and that's
My-
not to say they can't still make a car with a horrible flaw that causes major
Right.
problems. I mean, it happens for sure. There's still design problems. Heck, I think
But they're learning from them.
true, but I think Chrysler actually had I can't remember what engine it was, but I think they had an engine with a cam problem like that recently. Where
Oh, really? I didn't hear about that.
I can't remember if it was something in like the roller, because it had like those the roller lifters or whatever that have the little bearing on it or
Yeah.
the little wheel on it.
Little wheel on it.
And I don't remember if those were failing or if there was a lubrication issue or a tension issue or something, but those would just eventually stick, and then they would just wear the cam lobes to nothing.
You're gonna need those cam lobes.
You do. The engine runs better. But anyway, so yeah, there can still be problems like that. But I mean, think about it. You buy a car now Now, granted, they also mostly cost a fortune because, there's no cheap cars anymore, it seems like. But
Yeah.
still, I mean, you buy a car now and it's like, I mean, 80, 100,000 miles later, and there's a very good chance you haven't had to do anything to it yet.
Yeah, that's the way it's my Mazda. Bought it with 12,000, has 150 almost, and I'm like, I can keep it for another 100 easy.
Yeah, and it's
I've
not.
done nothing to it.
Yeah, I mean, my work truck, it's like it has, I think, like 86,000 miles on it now, and oil changes and 2 tires. I mean,
Yeah.
not even, it hasn't even needed 4 tires yet. It has like 80,000 miles on it.
Man, you beat the hell out of that thing. Oh wait, no.
Well, still, yeah, I'm okay. I'm gentle on stuff, but still.
You are gentle. And we going back to that. We're still talking cars. 2 weeks later, but I do that too. Don't accelerate fast. Never floor it. Aware of everything all the time.
Yeah. That's
So,
another thing. Knowing how all of it works makes
Yeah.
it so that you can't have
Yeah.
as much fun with it because
I know.
you can't beat on things because you know what you're doing to it.
Yeah, it's like feeling how your body works and then starting to eat healthy. I'm like, dang it. Now I got to do things to make myself live longer, not be sick all the time. For the Alero, I did 350,000 on that. I
Yeah.
think a lot of that has to do with me babying it, not flooring it,
Yeah,
beating on it.
and granted, you did have to replace a lot of things on it, but I mean, still 350,000 miles.
Yeah. Hey, the body was original when I got done. Okay.
Well, so was most of the engine.
Yeah, most. Yeah, but that's still, imagine doing that in the '80s car.
Yeah.
I always just the '80s. I mean, not that anybody will ever listen to this or care, that we're criticizing that decade. But man, were those some ugly cars. Wow.
There was like,
I mean,
and the thing is, there probably were some exceptions, and people like still talk about how amazing that car looked, and it's like, you just have that memory because that was like one of the few that was like, holy crap, a good-looking car.
well, what? I mean, tell me. Remember?
Well,
Okay,
can't think of
remember
any
Magnum?
examples.
Remember Magnum PI?
Yes.
The Ferrari.
Yeah, that wasn't even
That's the
that
only
good
one.
looking.
That wasn't even that, but that's the only one that I could think of. That was like when that came on the screen. Because again, what do we have to compare to?
Right.
Just a bunch of ugly shit. It's like, wow, look at that. So yeah, they were junk. Sorry, '80s lovers. I hate the '80s. There it is. I said it. It's
Oh
out
my
there.
gosh, that's
Sorry.
sacrilege.
Your topic. We already offended Russia, North Korea, and your topic is cheap Chinese products.
Well, it's kind of...
You know what? I mean, what? Why do we find a country to do this to every week? It's on you this time.
I will
love
say
the
this.
Chinese.
I'm
just saying that because they're going to own us in 5 years. I'm not saying that's not the reason.
I had to pick something for the topic to be called, but honestly, it's not just China. It's just globalized, just globalization in general in terms of getting our products from all around the world rather than having to make everything here.
Yeah.
And not, it's not a political thing. I'm not, this topic isn't about how, everybody should buy American because America,
Make America great again.
I just think that it's just interesting to think about how, if you think about somebody that was poor in, the 60s or 70s, and just the kind of luxury that they had access to versus now.
Yeah.
And it's because so many things have gotten so cheap.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and granted, a lot of it's just simple luxury products, but it has translated to a lot of things. And it's like, historically, stuff is so cheap now. I mean, you think about the stuff that you can get for, virtually nothing compared to what it used to be.
I ask you a question. Did stuff, for instance, big screen TVs when they first came out, the plasmas, the LCDs, remember how expensive they were? Just outrageous. And then within how many years now, you can get like a 60-inch TV for like $300. Is that because the quality, other manufacturers, patents got released, ran out, and quality went way down?
Were regular
TVs that way, or just an example of something? But
I think
No.
I think for certain, like, specific electronic kind of things like that,
Yeah.
I think over time technology just does get cheaper. It gets easier to make, and
Yeah. Okay.
and I think there's that's a kind of a big reason why that kind of stuff comes down in price. But I'm just thinking kind of just more broadly in terms of, like, even just like a toaster.
Mm-hmm.
When a toaster broke before, you had to fix it. You take it apart, you try and fix it, you come up with a solution. But it's like now, what's a toaster cost? $10?
Right.
I mean, you walk into a
For
store.
a good one.
Yeah, you can walk into a store and get a brand new toaster for like $10. I mean,
I just
everything
love how,
stuff is so cheap.
You went toaster. What was it? Toaster $10?
I don't know. It's just there's something.
But toasters are cheap. Yeah. That's a good example.
Well, I mean, I don't know if it's the best example, but I mean, if you just think back about certain things that it was like, I mean, think about a video camera. I mean, again, this partly is just due to the increase in technology in general, but it's also just due to the fact that there is cheaper ways to make things if you manufacture stuff globally. And in the 80s, yes, obviously video cameras were new technology. They were different, so they were expensive, but it's like you maybe could rent a video camera. A family might rent a video camera if they had like a special event coming up, or like, you might know somebody with a video camera.
Get one at the library,
Yeah, but nowadays it's like, yeah, sure, it's crap, but you can get a video camera on Amazon for $50.
Yeah, you know all about it.
And I've done it, and it's crap,
but you can get video on it.
You can
record video, and you can watch it with your family. And compared to how was that audio and video quality compared to the really expensive cameras in the 80s?
Probably similar.
Oh, really?
But here's the thing: you spend a couple $100 and you can get amazing video and audio that they wouldn't have dreamed of back then. And again, a lot of this is just the march of technology, but I think a lot of it also is just the fact that cheap stuff is made all around the world now, and we have access to it.
Mm-hmm. Access to it. We were talking about that today. Magic. You order something, I'll be here tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we take it for granted. Remember the magazines where you filled out the the little, in the middle there was the sheet.
There was like the little card that you had to pull out, and you'd have to fill in the part number and the model number and quantity and price. And you'd even have to put the price in there that it showed in the catalog.
Yeah, put the stamp on it, and heck, in 2 to 3 months you'd have your thing. It would come in the mail. Maybe if they lose it in the mail.
And if they had it in stock, which you couldn't know because there's no way to confirm that.
There's no way. It's so sad. My kids have no clue. They're like, it's not Prime. It's not going to come in 2 days. I'm like, well, there's a pandemic going on. So
yeah, it'll be here.
3 days. Here in 3 days.
It'll be here, and, eventually. It'll be here before you die, which is pretty good.
Yeah, compared to what we had to wait for. But we did have Hills and Best.
True.
The department stores, Twin Value.
Yeah, that's right.
Twin Value. That was a drive all the way up to Cuyahoga Falls. That was like a day's trip.
I remember walking to Hills.
You
back
walked
in the day.
Hills to Hills. You had a Hills in Barberton? Did you have a
No,
Hills
it was in Massillon when I stayed over at family's house.
Oh, got it.
We would all us youngins would walk to Hills
after it was
get
before
slushies.
Before it was Gold Circle. Remember Gold Circle?
Yeah, and then I think it's a Target now.
It's a Target now, yeah.
But so I mean, even things like clothes. I mean, it used to be if you were poor, you made your own clothes.
Imagine being that poor. I know.
Don't get me wrong. I'm sure that still exists, and I'm sure people still, have to mend clothes or use crappy clothes and stuff. But just think about, just in comparison, how cheap clothes are now.
You might as well admit now that you relate to this podcast because you're making clothes. Come on.
I was making myself some new shoes.
You're not shoes. That's above and beyond. You can't make shoes, but you can throw together a nice sweater.
Well, you haven't seen my shoes. You don't know.
Oh, okay. Never mind. I had no idea what you're doing in that garage of yours. Thought you had a welder and stuff out there, but here you're making shoes. Do people make shoes still besides, hordes of adolescents in China?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Probably. They
Is there
probably,
cobblers still?
there should be.
There should be. Do you, like Seinfeld, I don't really have shoes that need cobbled. Shoe repair places. I think those are probably out of business.
So overall, what do you think? Now, with all this just cheap stuff that's out there, do you think overall it's a good thing? I mean, I think it is.
Yeah, I think it's always good to have options.
Yeah.
I like being able to type in one thing on Amazon, or not even Amazon, and giving pages of choices
Yeah.
and seeing what the options and stuff I have. Of course, that's also a pain in the ass. It's like going to the grocery store. I just need a toothbrush, and 5 hours later, you're looking at toothbrushes still. It's like, I just want a toothbrush.
And if you're somebody like me that has a hard time making decisions, when there's 40 options, you might as well just go home with nothing because you're never going to get done.
I've been on the receiving end of you looking for something and be like, yeah, then this and this, and your reviews and research, and which I love, because then when I ever want that, I just like, hey Tony, what do you think? And then you tell me what to get. Or you just say, I got one, I'll sell you.
Yeah, and
or give me. Which I've taken a lot of your awesome, amazing hand-me-downs, which are above and beyond anything I've ever had that was worth anything.
So
I like being on the receiving end of that. But
well,
go ahead.
It's just one of those things that there's just so much more available, and I think it does kind of overall improve the quality of life because, I mean, quality of life. You can be happy without things and have a good quality of life without things, but I just mean like, just overall, someone's ability to have appliances and kitchen gadgets and clothes and shoes and all that kind of stuff is, I mean, it's all so cheap relative to what it used to be, I think.
Yeah. Accessible and cheap.
But
for most people.
Are there downsides to that?
I'm assuming you're going to say yes. I'm curious what those are.
Granted, they're first world problem type of problems.
Yeah.
You
have to point that out.
They're the kind of things that, it's you probably are kind of a dirtbag to even complain about.
Yeah. But you're not complaining. You're just talking.
Well, yeah, just talking. Well, I think first of all I think this has contributed to kind of the throwaway society that we live in. I mean, that's a tag, catchphrase. We're a throwaway society. But going back to the toaster, because I noticed that you really appreciated that example.
You're just gonna keep going back to the toaster. I've thrown away my fair share of toasters. Trust me.
We're gonna be like 12 podcasts in. We're gonna be talking about something completely random. I'm like, back to the toaster. I'm like, damn it, Tony, stop talking about toasters.
Stop. One of the T's in TnT is going to turn into toaster. You have how many toasters have you purchased in your life?
Oh man,
let's dig in here.
At least one.
At least one. Yeah, but
I think one.
You don't have kids that destroy everything, so
that's true. Well, see, and there you go. There's another a benefit to it. So the throwaway society means that everything is super cheap. So when it breaks, we're just like, oh, you know what? It's not even. And it's true. If a toaster broke, even if you could fix it, say it took you an hour to fix it, could it possibly be worth an hour of your time not to just spend $10 on one the next time you're at the store?
No, exactly.
I mean,
you're not going to sit there and fix it.
It's not. So I think just the fact that everything is so cheap, it does lead to that kind of throwaway mentality of like, well, yeah, it's broken, throw it in the trash, I'll get a new one.
Yeah, but you and I might try to fix it. Most people know. But we don't look at that as a waste of time. I might take it apart.
Yeah, I would probably just because it's something to do. It's like, I want to try to fix it.
But
and then
you say you've only owned one or two toasters, but you've only because you don't have kids. My kids put the toast bread in there, they toast it, they take it out, they put the butter on it, and then the butter's not melted enough, so they put it back in the toaster.
Yeah, that's always the problem.
Right. Well, that's that butter drips down on the bottom, and then I've had a couple small grease fires in the toaster, and when that happens, you're not taking it apart and fixing it.
No, probably not.
And sometimes you're standing outside your house while it burns to the ground. But that's never happened. I'm waiting for the day. as they throw water on the grease fire to put it out.
Yeah. The
Probably
grease/electrical fire.
Yeah. I should probably teach him not to do that.
That might be that. You talk about teach them about how good they have it, and I should teach them to
Yeah.
shut up and just live with their RC car that doesn't have a super long range because I had it so bad. Maybe you should be teaching them things like don't burn the house down.
While I'm at work, you know what? Use baking soda or flour. Do not use water on a grease fire. But we learned that at work. We didn't know that before we were taught it.
And maybe don't dump buckets of water on live electrical equipment.
No.
That's another one you might want to let them know.
What about cups of water? Just buckets?
Well, cups, whatever.
Oh, okay. Any water.
Large quantities of water.
I'm writing all this down so we can talk about it over dinner tomorrow night.
Okay.
I guarantee the house burns down tomorrow. I'll miss it by one day. Damn it! We were going to talk about this tomorrow. Where were we? Toasters?
Toasters. Yeah, it all comes back to toasters.
Yeah.
So I think just the fact that everything is so cheap is leading to kind of an increase in that throwaway mentality.
Yeah.
It's just everything now. Nobody keeps anything. It's just if it acts up a little bit, I'll just pitch it in the trash.
Yeah. I know. We do that too. Coffee makers, whatever, blenders. Just go to Amazon. Are you blaming Amazon for this?
No.
Okay.
It's their fault, but I'm not blaming them. No.
We don't need sponsors. Amazon doesn't need sponsors, so they'll never contact us.
Okay, so this is another one of those like whiny first world things that I think is wrong about this.
At least you're pointing that out first. That's good.
So it has gotten to the point where I'm this about me, that I'm usually willing to pay a little bit more to get something that I know is quality, because I hate having to return things, I hate having to buy things twice, and I hate having to waste time. So
you elitist bastard! You can just go out and spend as much money as you want on anything you want. It's terrible.
That's so...
God, about people like me.
I wish that was true.
Yeah, wouldn't that be nice?
That would be so nice. But no, it's just, for instance, just trying to set a TV up to be able to have two things plugged into it, because it's an older TV, has one HDMI input, and my mom wanted to be able to have two, like a Blu-ray player and an old VCR plugged into it. Well, you can't. So I had to buy a little HDMI splitter. So it's like a HDMI switch box, so that you can plug two HDMI things into it, and there's a little switch on the front. You can switch between the two. Simple thing.
Do you do it with the remote? No, you have to get up.
I think they have them with remotes, yeah.
Okay.
But either way, simple thing. You think, okay, just look up on Amazon. They probably have one. No, they don't have one. They have 4,000. 4,000 just generic, cheap Chinese HDMI switchers.
I hate Chinese people. Anyway, go ahead.
And they're like, they're like $15 to $20. And I'm like, well, I don't know if those are good, but I'll try one. Whatever. There's 1,400 of them. There's like 20 pages of it. I'll just pick one.
How much time did you spend going through the reviews? Was there a lot of reviews on each one?
Oh, like thousands of reviews.
Always amazed by.
And
this many people bought this specific one and spent it, and then reviewed it, because only 1% of the people buying them are reviewing them.
Oh, it might not even be 1%.
Well, yeah, I don't know anybody that reviews. Maybe you do. Anyway, anybody else that reviews products.
Right. So I bought one, and it had actually 3 inputs, no, it was just 2 inputs and 1 output. Well, then within like 2 months, one of the inputs stopped working, and she's like, well, whatever, I'll deal with it. And then I just switched it to the other input, and then like a couple months later, that one stopped working.
Lost both inputs.
It just failed. I don't know why, but so I thought, well, let me look and see if I can't even find a better one. I'm like, well, let me just pay a tiny bit more so I don't have one that dies again in a couple months. Right. And it's like, I don't even know what the good one is. And I finally do find one that's more expensive. It's like 3 times more expensive, but it's just another no-name Chinese brand that I've never heard of that has the same terrible reviews. And it's like, I don't even know if that's am I just paying extra for nothing? I don't even know.
You should have purchased a terrible Chinese TV that had 2 inputs, HDMI inputs.
Maybe that's my problem.
You need to throw that old TV away.
That's probably what I have, honestly.
Yeah.
It's like a Hitachi or something.
Oh, you did? You did buy a second one?
Yeah, it failed too. I mean, it was another cheap one. I just bought another one in the same price range. I just figured, well, I don't know. And it's just, so Amazon is like that with so many things. It's just overrun with so many just cheap options. And don't get me wrong, I'm all for just not spending very much if it works.
Yeah.
But you just don't know if you're just getting junk.
Yeah, that is a problem. And it's amazing. I hate, like you said, I hate returning things. You know, I feel bad. I don't want to. It's hassle. Timmy bought a pop-up tent. We had to return it because it broke. And same situation. There was pages and pages of pop-up tents, and not, some of them are $1,000 because you could take them to the top of Everest.
Yeah.
But most of them were like $40, and we didn't know which one to get, and it broke. Same kind of thing. Had to return it.
Yeah,
we just didn't get another one.
Yeah, and it's like they're so overrun with that I don't even know what is a good one anymore. And how do you, I can't even tell.
Bezos or Peso? What the heck's his name?
Oh,
Amazon
Jeff
owner?
Bezos? Is that his name? Yeah.
Yeah. There you go.
Maybe he knows what a good one is?
I was thinking pesos, but that's
different.
Mexican currency. Yeah. That's different. He could buy a lot of pesos, I'm sure.
Probably.
Yeah, we need to give him a call. Can we get him on real quick? Or
he's going to be a guest next week. Yeah.
Next week? Damn it. He's supposed to be on this week. We're talking about Amazon. You failed me.
Oh, don't get me wrong. Amazon is so pervasive in this world that no matter what our topic is next time, it'll probably involve Amazon.
Yeah, Amazon. What do you think about returning things that aren't broken? What's your stance on that?
I hate it.
I mean, because
I so rarely do it. Like, I hate. I don't know why. I don't know what it is that I have. It's almost like I'm afraid they're going to be like, oh, he's returning this. Like they're going to be mad at me or something. It's like I just can't stand it. I've kept
the same exact. Timmy wants to return something that's not broken just because he doesn't like it. I'm like, that's not nice. Like, you can't just return something. Is that a reason? I don't like it. That's not a reason. You bought it. It's your fault. You didn't do enough research, or you didn't read the reviews. So that's your $20 you're out.
Yeah, and it's maybe part of that is the reason why I do so much research before I buy something, because I know darn well I'm not returning that thing that I buy. So I better make sure that I've at least know as much about it as I can before I bought it. And I have bought cameras and stuff pretty much just to review them. And I got a comment on one of my videos because I reviewed this camera and I talked about how much it was, crappy. And somebody said, "Oh man, I hope that you were able to return it and get your money back after that. It's such junk." And I'm like, I'll be perfectly honest with you. I pretty well knew what I was getting myself into. I just wanted to, review it, confirm it, and share it. And I'm like, I didn't return that. I couldn't do that. I couldn't buy something knowing I was just going to return it.
That's what I think.
I couldn't do it.
I can't do it either. And Timmy just bought a remote control car that wasn't what he wanted. And I was under the impression we just had to keep it. And he's like, so-and-so returns stuff all the time. He just says he doesn't like it. And I had a hard time with that. And it was option on there, a bad website description, which kind of was. It wasn't what he wanted.
Yeah.
And they made it, they're just trying to sell it. So they made it look amazing, and it was not amazing.
Yeah.
It wouldn't go up a hill. We have plenty of flat areas to drive it there.
Yeah, and that's actually another thing too, is that not everything made in China is junk. China, there's a ton of good quality stuff made in China. What?
They're gonna kill you. Anyway, go ahead.
I know. I'm just saying, like, there's nothing that says that because it's made in China, it has to be junk.
Right. You do have that immediately. Like, damn it, it's made in China.
But I think there's a lot of Chinese companies out there that they just don't give a crap. They are going to make the cheapest,
Yeah, of
cheapest thing
course.
they can. Even if it doesn't work, they don't care. And they are going to just lie and just
Oh, sure.
misrepresent. I mean, it's like, I mean, again, I'll come back to some of the cameras that I've reviewed that, I
Like
mean,
I say, toasters.
the
Go ahead. Yeah.
frame rate, I mean, they'll advertise it as a resolution and a frame rate that it just isn't. They'll say it's stereo and it just isn't. They'll talk about, the zoom capabilities that it just doesn't have. They'll talk about image stabilization that it literally doesn't have. I mean, it's just,
Oh, so they're blatantly lying
oh, it's
about the.
blatant. It's blatant.
Oh, wow.
It's horrible. And then I don't know if you've seen any of the videos I made, but
Yeah.
okay, I'll actually ask you this. Is this something, especially with electronics, where if you pick something up and it feels kind of heavy for its size, it feels dense, does that kind of just give you that initial impression of, oh, this must be good?
Of course. Yeah, we associate that with quality.
It's like that line from Jurassic Park when that kid is playing with
Yeah.
those binoculars and or those night vision goggles, and the lawyer's like, "Are they heavy? Yeah. Then they're expensive. Put them back."
It's true.
We associate that. I got one of those.
Heavy.
I got one of those cheap Chinese cameras, and I took it out of the box, and my first impression was, "Wow, this thing actually has a good bit of weight to it." Well, after reviewing it, finding out how big of a piece of crap it was, something about the balance of the weight just kept gnawing at me, and I'm like, I have to take this apart. So I actually set up a camera. I took it apart on video. No joke. It has like a 5.5-ounce block of cast iron in the back of it.
Just for that reason, that they associate quality with weight.
Like 30 to 40% of the interior capacity of that camera is a special compartment molded for a block of cast iron.
You know what? It was China. It was from China, right?
Chinese,
It was
like a direct Chinese company.
It was probably lead, and you now have cancer.
I probably have cancer. No, it was harder than lead, I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
But
like, yeah,
it's
we're only
just,
gonna sell
I mean,
they also get cancer.
blatant, blatant.
Yeah, that's really funny. I think you remember you telling me that, or did you mention that in your video?
Yeah, well, I
Yeah,
mean, a couple of them.
I think I saw that in your video.
But so, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of blatant stuff out there, but, obviously, again, that doesn't mean that stuff that comes from China is bad. It's just, I think, because of the laws and because of the, I don't know what it is, if it's just like trademark laws there or something, that we can't go after them. So there's just like so many clone products that are like just obviously ripping off the design of a name brand product and trying to market it as if it's all that. And it's like, that's a cheap piece of crap. It is.
Yeah, yeah. People buy that stuff all the time, and at least now we can return them. Amazon's so good about it. Back in the day, I mean, I know they didn't have as much cheaply made Chinese junk, but a lot harder to return stuff back then.
Yeah. And something I see, and this goes both ways, and I think it's really stupid either way. The one way it goes is like an elitism over, you bought a name brand or you've paid a lot, so you feel superior. Like, oh, I paid this much for it, so I'm better. It's like, that's stupid. You're an idiot.
Yeah.
Why would you care what brand of a thing you have? I don't care about a brand. I care about performance, But
yeah.
And that like brand elitism has been there forever. But now I think it's almost starting to go the other way, to where it's like people buy something super cheap and then they get super defensive about it. Like, well, you're just paying for the name and I got this for super cheap, and, you're just some sheep that is paying too much for something because you believe all the hype, but really these things are exactly the same.
Yeah.
Have you seen much of that?
Not really. Where do you see that? Do you get?
Well, to be fair, I see it online.
Yeah.
YouTube comment sections, review sections, stuff like that, where you'll see a cheap product, and because I do research, I read reviews and stuff, and you'll see reviews of this inexpensive, generic or clone or something, and they'll say that, oh, it's it's all the exact same stuff, they're all made in the exact same place, there's no difference, you're just paying for the name, you're just believing the hype and stuff. And then that's one thing. It's like, okay, that whatever, if they're just trying to justify paying less, that's fine. But it's almost like then they go and attack the expensive stuff. So like,
Yeah, that's not good.
you'll see a higher quality product, and then everybody else, somebody that paid less for the cheap one will come in and talk about how that thing's crap, and everybody should just buy the cheap one because it's just as good or better and less. And I think
Yeah,
both.
which
I think both ways
the-
is stupid. It's like, buy what you buy and be happy with it. That's amazing. I don't want anybody to be unhappy with what they purchased. So if you're happy with what you bought, that's awesome.
right.
But I just don't understand why there's this like us versus them elitism, no matter on both sides.
Does that transition to food? Because generic seems like it's so hard to find a generic brand of food that they're trying to make it like the name brand stuff, and it just seems like it never is, ever. Doesn't it seem like generic food is really, really bad compared to the good stuff? It's hard to find stuff that's as quality as the name brand. I mean, I have 3 kids and I want to buy name brand stuff, but it's like, wow, if you buy it and have it, it's like, wow, it's so much better. I mean, the quality. Don't you see that at the grocery store?
I see that with certain things. There are certain items that, yeah, it's like, okay, the generic is just, they just don't hold up.
Yeah, I'm not talking about butter, like, Giant Eagle butter. It tastes the same as, I don't know, Land O'Lakes, whatever. Yeah. But like cheeses, you get generic cheese, it's terrible. Cereals, generic cereal. I'm just talking about the bag.
I have had some types of generic stuff that is really bad.
Yeah.
But it depends on what it is. I've had better luck in the last 5 or 10 years with generic food.
It's getting better, I guess.
But yeah, there's certain things where I've gotten like I forget what it was. It was some kind of boxed noodle dinners, that I found cheap somewhere, and I was like, I don't know, I live, just a single guy living in an apartment. You buy cheap dinners to make after work,
Those growing out of your closet, right?
They wouldn't even cook. It was the weirdest thing. I've never had a noodle like this, but I put it on my stove and started boiling these noodles. Huh?
It's like wood that wouldn't burn that time.
Yeah, I did get fireproof firewood once.
Yeah. Sorry, I just remembered you talking about the petrified log.
That's a good story. Oh, I'll cover the unburnable wood in a second here, but the uncookable noodles was almost as amazing. I start the water boiling, I put the noodles in, and like it gets to be where they should be done and they're not even close. So I cook them a little while longer, and I'm testing them like constantly because I'm like, any second now they're going to get too far.
Yeah.
It got to the point where the outer half of the noodle, like, so basically like thickness wise,
Yeah.
So like the outer, say, half of the thickness was just mush paste, and the inner half was still crunchy.
That's a bad noodle.
It just kept. No matter how long I cooked, they wouldn't not be like literally crunchy, uncooked in the middle, to the point that the outside was like mush that was like sloughing off.
You think it was just bad? It was expired or something?
I don't
was wrong
know.
With it? Or you think you went back and bought that exact brand? It was just, that was there.
I don't know. I think it has to be some kind of defect. I threw it out. Obviously, it was inedible. There was no way I could have eaten it.
Like the founder of the company was like, you know what? That's it. I'm making some noodles that you can't chew on. You can't eat that don't cook. I'm gonna stick with it. They're gonna be in all the grocery stores. That's funny. I never heard that. I heard the unburnable wood, but never the uncookable noodle.
I bought one of those stupid little plastic wrapped like bundles of like pre-split wood that they have sitting out in front of a grocery store,
Yeah.
Like for those losers with tiny apartments that don't have any way to cut their own wood, like me.
That's too afraid to cut their neighbor's tree down.
Again.
Anyway. Yeah.
No, so I bought one of those just because I'm like, you know what? I have a fireplace in this apartment. I'm going to have a fire,
Yeah.
And I would I would start a little kindling fire underneath that wood, and it would burn, it would flare up, and it would go out. And the wood would be like lightly singed. I did that multiple times until it was like I was getting nowhere, and I just got desperate. And I got my stupid propane torch and just held it against one of the logs for like 10 minutes.
Oh, that's a safe way to start a fire in your apartment.
And
I
I
got my propane.
Well, it's in a fireplace. It's fine. So I got done. And it was like there was like some smoldering embers on the side of the log, but it still wouldn't burn.
So the Amazon days, you could send that baby back.
I had, now, just again, I probably shouldn't be telling these stories, but I had some citronella oil from my camping supplies.
And it's a fireplace. It's a place for fires. It doesn't matter how you get that fire there, whatever you use.
So I lightly soaked the top of a couple of the logs, lit it on fire, and it was like a roaring citronella oil fire for like 5 minutes, and then it burned itself out, and it went out, and the logs were fine.
Gosh.
I did that like 3 more times, and I gave up. I couldn't burn them. They wouldn't burn.
Maybe it's the same company that made those noodles, and those noodles were flammable. Maybe you could have used those to start the wood. That's what
Maybe.
it was. Those noodles burned long enough.
It was going to take something nuclear to start that wood on fire.
Oh my gosh. And what did you do? Did you end up just throwing that log out? Put it out in the trash?
Well, it was a little bundle of logs. What I ended up actually doing was I ended up finally getting some just regular firewood from like, I think a tree, a big, huge limb fell down in my mom's yard, and I cut it up, just threw it in the back of my truck and took it back to my apartment.
There you go.
And
real wood, not purchased at a gas station. There you go.
So for the rest of that winter and maybe even part of the next, I would just get a good fire going with the real wood, and then I would put one of those fireproof logs on top of it once the fire was going really good, and it would burn that log up.
Oh, eventually it would actually burn.
It would burn it up, but only if it was like surrounded by a regular good flowing fire for like 2 hours.
It wasn't a freak of nature. It actually did burn. I wonder kind of what it was. That's amazing.
I don't know. It was the weirdest thing. I have no idea why it wouldn't burn, but it was fireproof wood.
Yeah, that's great. So that's where we are. That's where we went from Amazon cheap junk to unbreakable wood.
Yep.
You have a lot of stuff in your outline. You were talking about in here about affecting tools, and you specifically mentioned welders. Why did you mention welders? Because you have so many of them.
Because I've
tested so many.
Tested a lot. And I've tried a lot, and I have several. But
have you ever just like sold one to your cousin, and then while he was there, just threw a free one in?
Maybe.
You don't have that many, do you?
I don't have that many.
Would just like here. While you're at it, put this in the back of your Jeep as well. What's that? A second welder. Which you did appreciate.
They're buy one, get one free today.
Yes, that was amazing.
But,
yeah.
So I don't know that it's affected the quality of welders that much. I think it's just kind of affected the mindset. And, again, I mean, you get a little bit of that elitism on both sides, of the argument.
Yeah.
But mostly just what I've noticed is that it's just kind of affected the attitude of it. There's kind of like this indignation over something costing a lot these days.
Yeah.
And again, I just kind of see that with welders a little bit. You get this idea of anytime there's an expensive welder, people are like, well, it's ridiculous. It shouldn't cost that much. And you think, well,
oh, I see what you're saying.
Why shouldn't it cost that much? And I think they just get that idea that it shouldn't cost that much because you search welder on Amazon, and 500 super cheap Chinese welders come up on Amazon. Things from anywhere from like $80 to a couple $100. Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, of course, people don't think a welder should cost $2,000 because you can get one for $200.
Yeah, and they think it's going to do the same as why would you buy a $2,000 welder? There's one for $150 right here.
And in a lot of cases, it is almost the same thing because these days, a welder is a box of electronics.
Yeah.
And what can you make super cheap in China?
Yeah.
Electronics.
Sure.
You can make a circuit board super cheap in China, and it's a welder fundamentally isn't that complicated of a thing. Now you can, there's a lot of little in small things that go into making something that's really nice to use. But do the $200 ones work? From my testing, a lot of them, yeah, they work pretty good.
Yeah.
But so I think that's kind of, again, it's kind of affecting that mentality of people don't think they should have to pay as much. And in some cases, they're probably right.
Yeah, until they spend a lot less, get junk, doesn't work well. They can never make it work. They think they can't weld. And it might be a lot because of the tool. I know it's a lot of
And
not
that's,
knowing how they work, but also because they bought something really cheap because they thought this is, there's so many on here. This is all I need, and find out they wasted $200 when they could have spent another couple hundred more and got some quality.
and
Because
there's,
that's what you're here for, because your YouTube video can tell you what to buy.
and there's definitely some of that going on where, like you said, you buy something and you get frustrated with it because it doesn't work right. And you're a beginner, so you might not know why that isn't welding properly. Am I doing something wrong? Is the machine not working properly? Why is this going wrong?
Yeah.
But it's,
I've made that mistake with, I mean, Harbor Freight. I hate even saying it. There's so much cheap junk there. Tools too, and I hate buying cheap tools. There's nothing worse than working on something and not being able to do the job because you didn't spend enough. You found junk, and that's not good name brand. I have a hard time not buying good name brand tools.
yep.
Um, Craftsman, Snap-on, Cornwell. Once you go to Harbor Freight, you see these tool sets. You're like, wow, here's a set of 4,000 automotive tools for $8.75, $8.75.
Right.
I made that mistake. I went there because they had a paint sprayer, and I wanted to paint my barn. And I thought, you know what? I mean, it's a paint sprayer. It was like $30, and I could never get that thing to work. I don't know if I can't remember if I returned it, but it never worked. It would always there'd be water. It was spitting, and it never would get a consistent spray. And I wasted so much. I wasted a whole day trying to get this stupid $30 paint sprayer working. And when I probably could have bought a really nice one, and it would have worked out of the box easily, and probably would have helped if I'd have known how to use a paint sprayer.
Yeah.
But still, it goes that example of, you buy junk, you pay nothing, and that's what you get.
And that's why I've always kind of been that way about tools too. I always just like to spend enough that I feel like I'm getting a good quality tool, because I don't ever want to wonder if the problem is the tool.
Yeah, good point.
And that especially goes with like testing equipment, and I mean, I see even on like some professional jobs where somebody's got some cheap, quote unquote test equipment, and then, they're having a problem. They can't figure out what the problem is. And my first question is always like, does your tool even work?
Right. You're trying to diagnose something. That's
I
really
hate
important.
trying to diagnose something if in the back of my mind I have to wonder, is my result accurate? Because who knows how many hours I'm going to spend chasing nothing, and it's just because my result isn't accurate. And a good tool can screw up too, and things can, good tools can have problems and can break and stuff. But it's like, if there's any chance that I can eliminate a variable, or even just reduce the chance of that being a variable, for tools, it just seems worth it to me. I've spent, it's like you say, it's like you cheap out on a tool and then it breaks when you need it most, or just because of some little thing that isn't engineered quite right, or something because it's just made by some cheap company that hasn't done the research and taken the time to figure out all the little idiosyncrasies of what it's going to actually take to make that tool work the way you need it to work in the situation where you're going to be using it.
Yeah, the whole job gets screwed up because you don't have the right tool. Your whole day everything's more stressful. I think that's where we get the idea that the heavier the better, because we associate things with tools being well made, heavy, all of this half-inch drive ratchet, it's really heavy, so it's well made. That might be part of where we get that. Of course, if the Chinese are putting weights in their cameras, they're not trying to. Most people that are buying it probably aren't, mechanics and electricians and carpenters either. So maybe that's not where we get it.
I don't know, but So that's why I think specifically with tools, I tend to just err on the side of, I'll save up to get a better one rather than cheaping out, because it's, I just can't stand a cheap tool that just, I have to wonder if it's going to work or if it's going to break or if it's going to fit right, or, and I, for a while there were cheap tools that do have a lifetime warranty. In fact, a lot of the stuff at Harbor Freight has a lifetime warranty, and there are some tools that I'll buy at Harbor Freight just because it doesn't, it's a simple thing. It doesn't need to be, you can just look at it and tell right away, okay, that's going to do what I need to do or not,
Like a car jack. Who cares if it holds the car up the whole time you're working on it? No.
Did you hear about the recall on their jack stands?
No.
There was one kind of jack stand at Harbor Freight that had some kind of defect, and they recalled them. And then, like, not long later at all, they found one of their other lines of jack stands had, like, defective welds or something.
What a thing to have a defect in.
And then they were going to have to recall all those too. And finally, they just said, you know what? Rather than try and figure out which of every jack stand ever falls under it or not, just any jack stand ever sold by Harbor Freight, if you have one, bring it back. We'll give you your money back.
Gosh.
Ever. Any jack stand ever sold by Harbor Freight, bring it back, we'll give you your money back.
Isn't that scary?
That is kind of scary.
Not everybody's going to get that message.
No, I know, right?
Yeah. They'll get the message, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Well, and granted, that's the kind of thing that, even if it's 1% of 1%, they're still going to issue that recall because they don't want that kind of press of, oh, hey, our jack stands are killing people.
Right.
So, yeah, the problem may not be as bad as it sounds, but it sounds pretty bad.
That does sound bad. I don't know what I've only been there a few times. After I got the paint sprayer, it soured me, never go back. But what have you bought there that's good?
Oh gosh, just little things. And there's people that'll swear by some of their power tools or some of their, different things that they'll say, it's, again, it's really, really cheap. And if you're just going to use it a couple times, you're just somebody doing little things around the house. It's good enough. And a lot of times it probably is true, but I think just, even if it is something I'm just buying to use around my house, I think just because so much of my life has been working in jobs where I did absolutely need my tools to do what they need to do when I get them out.
Yeah.
I just have that bias in my head of like, well, I'm not going to buy a cheap tool, even if it's just to hang pictures in my house.
Yeah, when you're making a living that way, and you're out on the job and you can't go home till it's fixed and done. Any bonus or benefit you can add to that, if it's tools, you buy it.
If it makes the job easier, if it makes the job go smoother, if it's more likely to get done properly, it's just, I spend the extra money because I just, especially like I said, with testing tools, it's like, there's been so many times where I'm like, yes, I only need to use this like twice. It's a test tool or a measurement tool or something. I only need to use it a couple times, but then it's like, and I'll find one that I'm like, you know what? This one is probably good enough. It has everything I need. It's not the very cheapest thing out there. It's probably good enough. But then I start to think of, once I take that measurement, I'm going to now base a bunch of stuff going forward on that measurement. And what if, what if it's wrong?
I think the key phrase here is you start to think. You need to shut that shit down.
I really do. And I think... Go ahead.
I was just thinking, with what happened last week with my well pump, I had a ohm meter, but I didn't have an amp meter. I said a voltmeter, and now I'm like, well, I need an amp meter because in 9 years I've never needed one here. Yeah. But I needed one, and I didn't have one. Someone had to come out. We were just talking about this. Now, how ironic is that? 9 years I've called one maintenance guy, one person ever, and I was like, I never do ever. And now I had someone come out and test my pump. The very next week after we spoke about this. But now I'm like, well, I'm just going to get an amp clamp. And now I start looking at them. I'm like, I'm only going to use this thing. I'm not using this every day. But it's so hard for me to buy a $50 amp clamp. Yeah. Why is that? It's like, that's all I need. But I'm having a hard time doing it.
Yeah.
because there's one for 150. There's a Fluke for 200. I'm like, well, yeah, I just might maybe this one's better, this more accurate. I'm like, I gotta tell myself, no, just get the cheap one. It's all you need.
Yeah, I know.
You know,
I know, and
like you,
I'm getting a little bit better about me being more realistic about what I need for things that aren't my job.
yeah,
But it's
hard.
yeah,
Hard to
I've
do.
always had that, and when it does come to forgetting stuff for my job, this kind of move towards, I think this idea, this mentality of everything should be cheap because almost everything is.
Yeah,
It is kind of bleeding over towards tools, and there's been times where I'll need a specific tool for a specific job, and yeah, there might be some specialty place somewhere that if I could call the right people and get in touch with the right people, I could get the right thing. But
yeah,
I don't even know who that one company is that's left in the country that sells a good one, you know? And
right.
it's like, okay, so I can find 10 people that sell the tool that I need, you know, and it's some special measuring tool. And I
Hmm.
can find 10 of them, and they're all just like super cheap Chinese products. And I'm like, this measurement is going to decide whether or not, you know, some major piece of equipment has to be pulled completely apart and sent out for like thousands of dollars in repair, or gets put back together. And it's like, I don't, do I trust that to some cheap tool when, you know, I don't know.
You
It
don't.
just kills me. And it's like, I don't, if I buy that $20 tool, which, you know, a lot of people say that shouldn't cost that much. That tool should probably cost $200 for how much it would
Mhm.
cost it to make that tool precise enough to actually do what it needs to do. It should probably cost $150 to $200. But when I can only find $20 or $30 ones, I think, how could that possibly be accurate enough to even be worth doing?
Yeah, yeah,
I may as
exactly.
well eyeball the measurement
Right. Yeah, or just throw your money at it.
and just hope for the best. Just put it back together and
Yes.
hope for the best. Well, I didn't measure it because I can't even buy a tool good enough to measure it. So,
Yeah, I've had so much experience. When you're starting out as a mechanic and you're like, well, I'm not going to buy all Snap-on and Craftsman. I just can't afford it. This will work fine. And for some reason, I have this stash of Torx bits that I got probably at Advance when we worked there. Remember they had those little racks of
mm-hmm.
Torx bits,
Oh yeah.
and I just always buy those when I do brake jobs. T50s. Those bolts that come out of the calipers.
Oh yeah.
And so I used to have a bunch of them, and I've never bought good ones. And when I was replacing the one of the pulleys on Mom's Honda, one of the bolts holding it on to the engine block was a Torx bit, and you could barely get to it. You couldn't really see it, and if you stripped it or broke it, you were screwed.
Yeah.
How do you get that out? So I put my Torx bit in there, and I started taking it out, and I could just feel that it was going to strip.
Yeah.
And so I told Sean at work, and he gave me a Snap-on, and the fit difference, I mean, perfect. And I'm like, that's what I love. That's the tools I want.
Yeah.
Something that's expensive that just works. I got the job done in minutes, rather than I stripped the bolt. I had to take the engine out of the car.
Yeah.
How do you get to it?
Yeah. So
And
that's
that's what I go back to. Is like, man, that I want to buy good stuff. Throw all that shit away.
yeah. So that's one area where I think that it is a shame if this mentality of everything should be cheap
Right. That's it.
drags the tools down into that. And don't get me wrong, I think with tools you still can get good stuff, but
Huh?
I think that the good stuff is getting ever more expensive because the market for it is getting so much smaller. Because unless you are somebody that absolutely has to buy the expensive stuff,
Yeah.
nobody's buying it.
Right.
You know, everybody's like, I'm not paying Snap-on money, so they buy Harbor Freight stuff, and that's fine if that's what works for them. That's great that they have that option.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But now the Snap-on stuff is a more and more specialty market, so now it gets even more expensive. And some Snap-on stuff is just Chinese-made stuff now.
So they took the quality and dropped it to be price competitive.
Not with everything, but I think with certain things, to a point, I think they have a little bit.
Man, I just looked at the Snap-on catalogs back in the day, back when you used to get a catalog, and those tool sets. Remember that? Opening
Oh
those things
yeah.
and looking at those tool sets and just
Oh, it's just that
like
was you
imagining what you
just flip
could
through
do.
those catalogs and dream about those amazing sets, and they'd have like the whole
$12,000
they'd have
automotive set.
they'd have like the $15,000 box that had
Yes.
every drawer already full of stuff.
Seriously, that was the dream. Actually, no, it's kind of still is. I don't want to work on anything. I just want to buy that tool set
Yeah.
and just put it in my garage and just open the drawers
Yeah,
and
and
being like,
you know,
if I ever decide to work on something, I got the tool for it now.
and granted, having said all of that, it's not like all my tools are Snap-on. I have, older Craftsman stuff that I've had for 20 years, and
Yeah, most of my stuff is.
I have Carlisle stuff from Napa and stuff like that. I mean, I still have an extreme mishmash of brands.
Yeah.
I don't actually have very many Snap-on tools because they are really expensive, but for things that matter, if at all possible, I pay more for tools just because I've had cheap stuff break when it's the worst possible moment. Oh, and what I was starting to say about stuff having a warranty, like even a lot of the Harbor Freight stuff has a warranty. It breaks, you take it back there, they'll give you a new one. And again, for most people, when something breaks, they just go replace it. That's fine.
I hate that.
But if I'm out at a job and it breaks, I'm
The
screwed.
worst.
I can't just walk out. I can't just leave and go get it replaced. This thing has to work.
Right. That's not convenient at all. I hate that. Even if
I
I'm
do too.
working at my shop at mom's, and I know I have the tool that will work in the shop at home, I'll stay over there and try to do it the worst way possible, so I don't have to leave, stop the job, and go get it.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know why I do that. Like, well, I have a cutoff tool at home. I could just go home and cut that off. Instead, I just beat on it with a hammer or spray it with PB Blaster because I don't want to leave and go do it. Get the right tool. Do you do that too? Do you find yourself not wanting to stop to get
Yes,
something that works?
absolutely.
Okay.
It's like, oh, okay, I don't have the thing for that, but let me try 50 things that probably won't work before I just give up and go get the right thing.
Oh, it's so dumb. If someone was there that could drive, like, just go get that tool. I'm going to work on it while you're gone. But it feels like I'm not being productive. I can get it in 2 seconds. It's going to happen 3 hours later. I'm like, you know what? I've got to get the right tool.
Yep.
So I'm glad I'm not the only one.
No.
But we took stuff apart all the time together and alone that required specialty tools. Like there was a special reading the Haynes manual, use tool number this, and this. We're like,
Yep.
I'm going to make my own. And we almost always got it. Like I don't think very rarely did we purchase the specialty tool.
Yeah.
But how good would that have felt to just have a box of the tools that you needed?
That would have been amazing.
It would have worked.
And that's again another one of those things where it doesn't necessarily make the job doable or not. Like again, you can get a lot done with a cheap set of tools. But oh my gosh, you know how much just easier and more convenient it would be if you just had the right tool every time?
Yeah, that's what I mean. I wonder what
so
that's
nice.
like.
I don't know.
How unfair is it that now I could afford nice tools when I need it. I could buy nice tools. I have more money now. But now I'm not working on anything anymore.
Well, you start working on stuff again.
That's what I mean. Like, I don't want to work on anything anymore. I want to buy the nice tools, and I could. Then it was like all you had was cheap ass shit. You didn't have any money to buy anything else, so you just worked your ass off. And then now it's like, oh, I have the money now, and I don't work on anything when I can afford it.
Yeah.
That's just not fair.
Yep.
We just needed boxes of Snap-on tools. We'd probably still be mechanics if that was the case. Maybe that's a godsend.
Yeah, maybe
we had all that nice stuff. We'd still be wrenching.
Well, I still am, just not on cars.
Right. Yes. I am not. I mean, I still am, but only when I have to.
Yep.
You do prefer to not, though, right?
Well, I'm working towards that.
Your hands are slowly healing.
It's actually funny. I was just thinking about the other day. I was, again, just making a stupid YouTube video where you just see my hands. I was laughing because it was one of the first videos in a long time where there wasn't just like, I don't know, grease, day-old grease like in the grooves of my fingers that I've scrubbed and showered 15 times and still doesn't come out, and just hunks of skin missing off a couple of my fingers.
can't believe you're single still.
Yeah.
You just go, yeah.
Yep. Ladies.
You realize that the ladies that listen to this are related to us.
Well, I can always dream that maybe someday a really desperate, sad lady that isn't related to me will watch this or listen to this.
Just describe your hands, I guess, only. What's the rest of my body like?
Yeah.
Wait and see.
Less grease crusted than my hand.
Not none, but less.
Just less.
At one point on your outline, you mentioned stop bitching like an old geezer.
Yeah.
You know what? A lot of this does sound like
it's just
an old man where it's like, my generation, we didn't have choices.
Yeah, are we just old? Is this just all back in my day syndrome? Because
we ordered shit off of a catalog. It's like, man,
I know, and it's back when things were made right and stuff. There's been crap made forever. You could buy cheap junk a long time ago. I think like we were talking with cars, I think overall just the sheer quantity of cheap good stuff that we have available is just unbelievable.
I know. It really is.
It's just amazing.
Computers. I mean, we talked about that, I think, in one of our podcasts about my Packard Bell.
Yeah.
And I paid like $1,400 for this piece of shit desktop that would now be worth 50 cents for what it was capable of.
You'd probably find it's probably starting to get old enough that there's some collector would be willing to pay you $1.50 for it.
It was all my money for this. I remember the specs on it, and now it's just, you laugh so hard because you can get a really nice computer for a couple $100.
I know.
Compared to that, nothing.
Yeah, absolutely.
That the one that you built, that you gave me is, I don't know what it cost for you to build it, but it is just incredible. The difference, the amount of storage, the speed, you turn it on, it just is on. Then that thing, you turn it on and go do up dinner.
Yeah, get a sandwich.
Yeah, come back, still loading.
Yep.
CPU still full. The 1 megabyte of memory.
Yeah.
All consumed by the operating system.
Is that what that had?
I don't know.
How much RAM did that thing have?
I don't think it was. I don't know. It was. I wish I guarantee I still have that sticker from that thing somewhere upstairs. I should find it.
I remember getting these old computer magazines from they were like kind of business oriented, kind of like enterprise oriented catalogs that companies could order stuff from. And I remember getting these things and looking through them at just the specs that you could choose from, and the huge RAM numbers and the huge processor speeds, and just being so amazed and just looking through it. And I just remember laughing with people that, about how much RAM stuff was starting to come with now, Yeah. It's like, and we would laugh and be like, can you imagine if it had a gig of RAM? We would laugh at these computers that, because, these are enterprise computers. They're designed for CAD drafting and compiling work and stuff like that, where they were way bigger than what the average person could use.
Yeah.
And you could get them with 512 megabytes of RAM, and it was crazy. And it's like, oh my gosh, can you imagine someday they'll have a gig of RAM? Can you imagine a gig of RAM?
And how you'd think we were 100 years old.
I know, you would.
That long ago. My work laptop is standard 8 gigs of RAM.
Yep.
That's just, I'll get 8. Well, it's not enough. Let's add another 4.
Oh, and that's the thing now. You look at you look at a review of some new Ultrabook that comes out, some super thin, light laptop, with a touch screen, and they're like, well, the specs are pretty good, but it does only have, even the high, the mid-spec model only has 8 gigs of RAM. It's like, wow.
Yeah, I
think
just want
about
to slap
that.
the shit out of the person that wrote that. It's like, hey,
it's not even
20 years old, freaking Gen Zer.
Yeah, and it's not even it's not even a super high performance laptop. It's like a thin and light, it's a super thin portable thing.
Yeah.
It's only 8 gigs of RAM.
It's their negative comment about it. Well,
Yep.
yeah, I don't know. When processes this much at once. Did you see the new LCD wall screens? You see those?
I don't know.
Where it's just a wall of that's your TV, your screen, your viewing port.
Huh.
I don't know who. It's Samsung. I think it's Samsung. Look it up.
Could
It's
be.
insane. You. It's your whole wall, and it's beautiful. I mean, it's probably like 10 grand, but next month it'll probably be like $100. You know.
Yeah. Well, once a few people pay the 10 grand for it and they recoup their
Right.
development costs, then they'll start selling it for $50.
I hate giving away our age, but do you remember when DVD players came out?
I do.
And I remember Brad was working at Best Buy and he was telling us about these DVD players, and we couldn't believe it. There's no way. There's a disc. It's going to play a whole movie, but they were like $400-$500. So who would ever buy one? Now they're 15.
I remember
if you want one.
Yeah, I mean, I remember walking through, department stores in the music section and looking through their selection of cassette tapes.
You're gonna say, I thought you were gonna say CDs, but you said cassette tapes.
Cassette tape. I mean, I remember that. So
I
had a cassette player, and oh my gosh, remember, it was so awesome once you had these cassette players because you could record. You could get one of those cassette players that had the 2 tape decks in it.
Gosh.
And then you could record from one to the other, so you could make people copies of discs or copies of your cassettes. But even better, you could make mix cassettes.
Yeah,
you could put like all the best. But of course, the cassette tape quality was already garbage, and then you copy that garbage across like a $75 Iowa dual deck cassette player.
I remember the Iowa Ryan had one of those. Listen to Garth Brooks and Brooks and Dunn crank that thing in his room.
Yeah,
but actually that was the D player. But do you remember the security tab that would be broken off of the cassette tape, so you couldn't copy it?
Yeah,
you just had to put tape over it.
Yeah, you had to just like wrap tape around it. I've done that.
Security. It's like, you're gonna teach you not to copyright. I'm gonna break this piece of plastic off. Okay. Tape on.
Yeah, I got Scotch tape in my closet. It's no big deal.
That was tough. Yeah, Laura she wants to go back to those. She loves that. She's like, how come you can't buy those anymore? That's the only way to do it. Make someone a mixtape. How else are you gonna express your love for the other person? Without making them
because on like an iPod or a phone or something like that, you could never assemble a mix of songs.
You can't if you're Laura.
Well, that might be.
It's my fault because I'm a bad teacher. You should show her how to do it.
I don't even know if I know how to do it anymore.
It's just, I can't believe that was what we grew up with.
Yep.
I remember Brad telling us, his friend Chris. Remember that? I don't know if you know Brad's friends much, but he would call them DVD discs, and Brad would yell at him and say, "It's not digital video disc." Yeah. And he would scream at him.
I can imagine Brad yelling at somebody over that.
Just at Best Buy while he was working, But yeah, the $400 DVD players, those were all the rage. You couldn't afford them. Didn't you have a Laserdisc player?
Oh my gosh, we did. You know what? I don't know if it was a Laserdisc player. What was it called? It was the ones. We didn't have a Laserdisc player where they came in like the huge discs. We had the type of player. I don't know what you call it, but it was like the size of a record, but it was like a 1/4 inch thick, and it was square, and it was like a
square.
It was like a big drive, it almost looked like a. It was like the size of a record if the record was in its like jacket, but then it was also like a 1/4 inch thick. Well, it did have some kind of a disc inside of it, but there was just like a little door on the end of it, and you couldn't even open the door. I don't know how it opened, but you would just like insert this whole thing into this player, and it would like slide in and like ka-chunk in, and like a little thing would close over it, and then
the size of a couch.
It would somehow play then, but then when you'd have to eject it, and it would have to like close the thing up inside, and then it would spit out this big cartridge again.
My God.
I don't remember what you called that thing, but we had one of those.
VHS.
What's that?
4 VHS players, huh?
Yeah.
Because I remember being in Grandma's basement. I don't know if you lived over there at that time.
We
And
did.
I just remember those huge laser discs. And I thought it was your laser disc player, and I just remember
Yeah, I
like,
mean
wow,
that might have been what it was called. I don't remember. I don't remember what it was called. I just know the discs didn't come out of those cartridges.
okay. Yeah, these were released. I'm looking them up right now. They're comparing them to a DVD, and they're like 10 times the size. And they were
Yeah.
released on December 11th, 1978. But that was in the 90s probably.
Well, the thing we had might not have been new. We didn't have a lot of new stuff back then. We had hand-me-downs, and we had, whatever we could get.
State of the art, amazing.
And we had like 5 movies for it ever. I mean, like, I think we must have got it used, or somebody donated it to us, or we gave it to us or something, and they just gave us the thing and like the 5 or 6 movies they had for it, and that was it. That was what we had.
You know what's amazing? I'm reading the capacity, okay? 30 to 36 minutes per side. That means you had to get up and flip it over and put it back in halfway through. Now, how far? That was 1978. I know that was 42 years ago. But how far have we come for? Now it's everything is. What do you want, my kids? Well, check Prime, check Netflix, check Hulu, check Stars. Check Disney Plus. It's like you have 100.
Do you have Disney Plus?
Yes. Why?
I don't know.
We have it. We have it for Marvel.
Yeah.
All the Marvel movies are. But yeah, why? You want to see something about Disney? They're gonna own
no
your house. Probably you're paying Disney for your house right now. I guarantee it.
Somehow, if you follow the money far enough, it goes to Disney.
Yeah, and you just dissed them.
But no, I mean, you think, like you said, that thing holds like what, 30 minutes of probably like what do you think, 240p video on each side?
Yeah, if that.
And now you can get a memory card the size of a pinky fingernail.
Yeah.
That holds 512 gigs.
Oh my gosh, this needs to be a podcast. Us just talking about old and new technology, where we were, where we are, and where we're going to be someday.
Well,
seriously, it'd be amazing.
We're pretty close to that right now.
Yeah, we've been talking about that a while.
Yeah,
it had to be. I mean, I wish that my kids had to experience that so they could appreciate what they have. But again, I'm an old man now. Yeah. And they're gonna be saying the same thing to their kids. Like, we used to have to press buttons. Now you can just think it and it's there. We didn't have an input in our brain. I don't know where we're going now. Where are we headed? But
yeah, it'll be something like that.
Better than I used to think. How do you get better than a DVD? Or a single. Where you just want that one song.
Yeah,
you don't have to buy the whole. We'll throw a second song on there that's shit.
Yeah, but we'll give you the one good song that you want, but then we're going to charge you extra for the one shittiest song on the album that nobody wants, so we'll sneak it into the single of the good song.
And you had to drive to the mall or Best Buy to buy it.
Yep.
That was a day,
I know.
Your cheap-ass car that didn't make it 100,000 miles, and you hoped you could get there to get your single. Now we're driving down the road, and Ellie says, "Can I borrow your phone? There's a song I want to buy." And then we're listening to it a second later for 99 cents.
Yep.
Magic. So
cheap stuff from China hasn't been all bad.
He's right. Your outline is pretty full. We've done an hour and a half, and I don't think we covered half of it. Maybe we have.
Yeah, we pretty much covered the main points. I don't know.
I wanted to touch the counterfeit products. I've never received one of those. I've heard about them.
Yeah.
What have you heard about, or you actually received one from Amazon?
I've been really careful not to receive any.
Okay,
but just because of the stuff that I've been into and reviewed on my YouTube and
stories,
stuff like that. Memory cards. I have cameras and I look for memory cards and stuff. The main name brand memory cards, you get on Amazon to buy it, and there's tons of reviews in there that are like, be careful what seller you get it from. when you get it, here's the things to look for to be able to tell if it's counterfeit or not. And it's like pervasive. I mean, there's tons of counterfeit products. And then there's like some microphone companies talk about, just be super wary of counterfeit products. I've seen reviews online of different companies showing, or not companies, but different YouTubers getting products from different companies and then buying the same thing from Amazon and showing that the one they received is a counterfeit, comparing it to the real one. And
that's amazing. That's horrible.
Yeah, there's counterfeits out there for sure. Mostly electronics and that kind of thing, at least is the stuff that I've had the experience with in terms of what I've seen, just because that's kind of the stuff that I'm researching most of the time.
I've seen people get something they weren't expecting at all, where they maybe were fooled into. Someone bought a patio chair and ended up being like for a playhouse,
Oh yeah,
yeah. No description of that. Price and everything matched something that would be something a person would sit in, and they held it up, and it's for a dollhouse.
Yeah.
That seems pointless because you could just return it. So why would they do that? Maybe they're hoping that.
Yeah, and that's.
But that's the kind of that's the only thing I've ever seen.
Some people, I think they're just hoping for those times when people don't. I mean, a lot of times, people will buy something and then they get busy with stuff, and they, Amazon's return policy is 30 days. So
right.
You might buy something, not open the package for a while, or you open it, glance at it, don't think. I mean, obviously, if you're expecting patio furniture and you get a 2-inch by 3-inch box, you pretty much know you got the wrong thing.
Yeah.
But
in that case.
Yeah, or like with me when I ordered something kind of small and I got like a 6-foot by 5-foot box and it was like a table, like a DeWalt table.
So. Yeah. Yeah, that's something you just keep though.
No, I sent that back. Well, actually, no, I told them to come get it and they came and got it and took it back.
Yeah, that's a pretty big mistake.
So yeah, stuff like that happens. But yeah, I'm not necessarily talking about that. I'm talking about the people that, I mean, memory cards are a big one I see where, people will buy what's supposedly like a 128 gigabyte memory card, and it'll look like the right thing, and you put it into the computer and it's detected as the right thing because they have some kind of fake identity, like identifier software on there that makes it identify itself to the computer as the right thing. But then they try and put a video file on it, and everything above 4 gigabytes that gets put on that card is corrupted and gone.
Oh, that's terrible.
Because it's a 4 gigabyte card labeled as 128 gig, name brand, and so, yeah, it happens.
Yeah, that would be terrible, especially if you're dropping everything on there and then that's your storage, that's your backup, and then you don't have it.
And it's gone.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that happens. But, yeah, I don't know. That's it. I just, sometimes it just, this kind of stuff just comes up to me again, when I'm looking for a good tool and all I can find is a cheap one, or I find counterfeit products or something that just kind of brings to my head, man, I wonder how much of this is just because society has shifted so much because of just the incredible availability of cheap stuff now,
Yeah, I think we determined though the end is it is more, it's better really.
Oh, there's definitely more good than bad of it for sure.
Yeah.
I just think that mentality of just expecting everything to be cheap, because why wouldn't it be? It's all so cheap now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you explained it that way. That really makes sense. I didn't really understand. You said you want to talk about this topic, and I read your outline. I'm like, wow, this isn't going to be interesting. But it really
maybe it really isn't. I don't know.
It really is to me now. I know we went a lot of places, and we alienated another country. I don't know, what country do you want to talk about next time that we can,
you pick the country we get hate mail from next week.
I had North Korea and Germany. You took Chinese. I think you'll probably get killed before me. So you already got the lead poisoning.
From the Chinese lead cameras.
2 weeks from now, I'll be like, I'm all alone because Tony's puking his guts out from the lead poisoning. You still have that, or did you return it?
No, that was actually the one that somebody said, oh, I hope you returned that.
Oh,
and I'm like,
right.
It's like, oh, I hope you were able to return that piece of junk. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I didn't even put it back together. It's still in pieces.
It's still in pieces. Once I found the weight in it, I was like, I'll put it in this box.
I don't even know what I did with the weight. It's not in the
Yeah.
box. It's not parts.
Try using it on your desk to hold some papers down.
That could work good for that.
All right, well, podcast number 3.
Podcast number 3.
It's a good one.
Yeah,
I mean, I'll let all our listeners be the judge of that. But
yeah, all 7 of them.
yeah, hey, you said 18.
Well, 18 last time. But once they get a few
Hey.
minutes into this one, they're gonna be like,
Hey, Bezos started out of his garage, okay? You know?
yeah.
I'm
Well,
not in the garage.
I'm not in the garage
Still.
either, so
Next week we'll move this to the garage.
let's move this to the garage. That way we can be as successful as Bezos and Apple.
Every great business starts in the garage.
Yeah, Apple started in the garage.
Yeah, that's the only 2 I can think of.
I mean, that's what they say. I don't know if it really did.
Become successful, and then they just say that to make them sound humble.
Yeah, they're like, we were in the back room of my mom's house. I don't want you to talk about this garage business.
Yeah. Well, that's all I got.
All right, that sounds good. So, I guess that's it.
All right.